Thank you. I was trying to figure out earlier today, I've been up on the stage a lot doing introductions and sponsor announcements and things, but I don't think I've ever actually spoken at Product Tank London, so it's a first for me as well. It is my fault you're all here, because I did start this thing 7.5 years ago, and it's been a pretty amazing journey, I think, to get to this point. So I want to share some of the experience that I have from running product and from writing the book over the last couple of years. So if you don't know me yet, my name's Martin. I am also known as the Big Friendly Giant for obvious reasons. And I've been building product online for over 20 years, which means I started when the internet still came on floppies. I can also claim to have beaten Periscope, Facebook Live, Snapchat, everyone else to the punch by running the first online live stream in Europe, way back in 1997. Of course, it did take a giant satellite truck and 5 engineers from the local telco just to make the thing run. The resolution was so terrible, I don't even have a screenshot to share with you. And since it was a student orchestra festival, I'm not entirely sure the sound was much better. But it worked. Some of the other amazing experience I've had is just across the river, building the first product team at Huddle. Many of you probably know, some huddlers in the room. And one of the things I really learned there is that it's all about the team, right, as we all know. So we had one major release that really sticks out for me, which is one of the biggest releases we did since I joined, one of the most successful since I joined. All the metrics were going up and to the right, just like you want them. Engagement, conversion, customer satisfaction. And as the whole team, back then, small team, was gathered around one of the whiteboards doing a retrospective, trying to figure all this stuff out, I realized that I hadn't really done anything in that release. I hadn't written any stories. I hadn't done any wireframes. I'd barely influenced the prioritization, which is kind of an odd feeling because that's what we product managers do, right? We write stories. We prioritize stuff. But what it really came down to is that it was the team that had done the job. And I think the amazing thing in that stand-up was that the team was really happy about it. They were super excited about this release. And the retrospective was almost entirely positive, which is a feat in and of itself, considering they look like this most of the time. So this is not about me. It's not about genius product designers. This is not about amazing product leaders. Because product management is not about product. Product management, as I think we all know, is actually about people. And so ever since those experiences and many others, I've been trying to figure out what it is that makes teams like this successful. And over the last 2 years, these two friends of mine and I have been out interviewing product leaders to try and answer that question. This was our writers' retreat in California. It was really hard work, I have to say. And it all starts, like any good heist movie, with assembling your team. You probably recognize this. It's also my fault. I drew this Venn diagram the first time, defining product management as the intersection of the customer, the technology, and the business. And it's a great way of defining what we do, but the challenge of it is a lot of people think that means all the product managers have to look like this, when actually most of us look like this, or like this, or like this. And it's only by coming together as a team that we actually can bring all the skill sets together that we need to build great products. But it's important to think even deeper than that and think about what other skills you might need. And just some examples other than that are work experience, life experience, industry knowledge, and background. The more you can think about diversity, the more you can bring this together, the more you can map your team against these various aspects and what skill sets you might need in your organization. And again, figure out how you find those complementary skill sets that can bring more to the table. And the reason this is so important, it's so important to have diversity in your teams, is that the more you expose each other to different viewpoints, different perspectives, the more likely you are to have empathy with your end customer as well. And we all know that's where great products come from. So that's your product managers, but as I said in the beginning, product is a team sport. I don't really care if your job title is product manager, designer, engineer, QA, data scientist, product owner. We all own the product together. As Marty Kagan, who's probably the godfather of modern product management, said, if you're only using your engineers to code, you're probably only getting half of their value. I would argue that's true for product managers as well. If you're only using product managers to groom your backlog, you're probably only getting half their value. If you're only using your engineers to push pixels around, you're probably only getting half their value. The more we can bring everyone together into one cross-functional team, the more likely we are to build great products. Because by being cross-functional, you can actually marry up the opportunities presented by the problem space from your discovery with the opportunities given by the solutions, what you can build, what's feasible, what's legal, whatever else you might need to think about. And those cross-functional teams are so important as well, because as we all know, once you have more than one team, you immediately, automatically get friction with every other team in the organization. Companies that look like this is why we have project management tool sets, why we have checklists, why we have inboxes and outboxes, why we have to go ask for permission, why we have to disturb each other all the time. But by bringing all the skill sets you need into one team, you don't need to do that. And my favorite example of this is actually thinking beyond just development, UX, and product, to thinking about what other skills you need in a team for it to be successful. Does anyone here work for TransferWise? No hands that I can see. So TransferWise is one of my favorite examples for this, because when they build their teams, they think about everything that team needs to be successful. Their currencies team, for example, is a team that decides what new currencies to launch on their currency transfer platform. And of course, as you can imagine, it's not just a question of adding USD in a dropdown. It's a little bit more work than that. And in a traditional organization, they'd have to go to a banking team and ask for permission to open a new bank account. Or they'd have to go to a legal team and ask for a new version of the agreement to be written up. But instead, what they've done is they've put a banker and they put a lawyer on that team, so that the team has everything they need to execute. They have everything they need to be autonomous and go do what they need to do. It's also important to make sure they're co-located. Hope we all agree on that. It's a utopia sometimes. Because at the end of the day, it's more important that the team is together and can have that high bandwidth communication with each other as we're trying to figure out the product, trying to figure out the customer problem, and trying to figure out how to solve it. It's way more important than having product and UX next to the customer, although hopefully you're going back and forth a lot. So now that we've picked our team, we've picked all the skills that we need, the next step is to figure out how to create the environment for that team to succeed. And this isn't about the giant ball pit, although that can be fun. It's not about the ping pong tables and the free snacks. It's about thinking about what really makes a team successful. How many of you heard of Project Aristotle at Google? Okay, a few less hands than I thought. So I'll just catch up quickly on that. Project Aristotle is this amazing research project that the HR team at Google in Silicon Valley in Mountain View did over 2 or 3 years, where they measured every single one of their teams across hundreds of data points to try and figure out what it was that made their team successful. Now, being Google, they figured the more Stanford engineers they can cram into a team, the more successful it's going to be. The more PhDs or patents they have, the more successful they're going to be. But what they found in this research is that those things have no correlation whatsoever with success. And you've probably actually seen or heard that Google's changed their hiring programs a lot because of this. They no longer require product managers to be computer scientists or have that background. And they stopped using all of these kind of brain teasers and IQ questions because of this. What they found instead was 5 factors that lead to team success. You've probably heard of some of these. And the number one by far was this concept of psychological safety. It means that team members are more likely to admit mistakes to each other, more likely to take on new roles and challenges, more likely to harness new diverse ideas and challenge the status quo. All things I think we can agree are hallmarks of great teams. So that's how to keep them successful. What about motivation? How many of you heard of Daniel Pink? A few more hands on that one. He did a bunch of research together with MIT and wrote it up in a book called Drive, The Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us. If you don't want to read the book, there is a great TED Talk, treated as a Cliff Notes. And what he found in that research is that the kind of old models of motivating teams are broken. Once you pay someone a market rate, which we should all be doing, adding incentives that are financial, like bonuses, options, etc., don't actually impact a team's or an employee's ability to be creative, come up with innovative solutions, or ultimately be successful. What they found instead, because everything comes in threes, was autonomy, authority, mastery, and purpose. Autonomy is our desire to be self-directed, and it increases engagement over compliance. Mastery is our urge to get better skills and master our craft, which is hopefully why you're all here today. And purpose is the desire to do something that has meaning and is important. So the more you can find motivators in these three areas for you and your team, the more likely you are to be successful, the more likely they are to care about the end product, and the more likely you are to get innovative solutions. And then we have to figure out how we actually want to lead these teams. As leaders of teams, as leaders of product people, it's important to understand what this means. There are three key types of leadership: authoritative, delegative, and participative. Authoritative is basically where the manager gives clear expectations, makes all the decisions with little or no input from the team. It's very task-driven, and it works well when labor is low-skilled and the leader has all the knowledge and experience. This is basically your 18th century factory floor. Participative is a little bit better. It's where the leader gives hands-on guidance, takes input on decision-making, but retains that decision-making for themselves. It's very collaboration-driven. Modern management theory, hopefully how the baseline for most of you. And it's great for where workers have some decisions, but you want to retain that decision-making at the top. And the final mode, and what we found most successful teams to be using today, is delegative or autonomous teams, which is where the leader still gives high-level guidance. They're still really important to this equation, but they leave the decision-making up to each individual autonomous team. This is very people-driven, and it works great on the creative jobs, the knowledge-working jobs that we all have. Autonomy is important because it motivates individuals better, as we've heard. It scales better, and it also means that you can stay quick and nimble no matter how big your organization is, because you're just carving out new autonomous teams that can stay agile and stay focused on the customer. And it works better because at the end of the day, our teams are smarter than we are. We all know this. But we also know that they're closer to the customer. So they have more information than we do about the customer problem, what they're trying to solve, what they're trying to build. A lot of people hear autonomy and immediately think it's anarchy. Everyone can do whatever they want. How are we going to manage that? We're never going to get anything done. We're never going to ship anything. But the key is to figure out how to have what's called aligned autonomy or autonomy with accountability. There's a great chart from Henrik Nieberg, who's the organization designer and agile coach at Spotify, who came up with their kind of tribes model, tribes and squads model, mapping out alignment versus autonomy. Start off with low alignment and low autonomy. You kind of have your classic micromanaging organization and a very indifferent culture. If you move up on the alignment scale, it's a very authoritative organization, still with a conformist culture, where the manager sets the goal but also micromanages how to get there. If you have low alignment but high autonomy, this is your classic startup, entrepreneurial organization, very chaotic culture, you kind of hope somebody's working on the customer problem. And like any good 2x2, you want to be in the top right corner. High alignment and high autonomy means that you are setting the goals, but you let the team figure out how to get there. And this is how you build an innovative organization and a collaborative culture. And it all starts with how you actually set those goals as a leader. So in a traditional organization, you'd set your company goal, And then the company would go tell each individual team, this is what you have to contribute to that goal. And then each team would go tell each individual, this is what you have to contribute to that goal. And whatever your planning window is, if it's a quarter or a year, at the end of that quarter or that year, you'll realize you missed it because the team couldn't actually deliver what you told them to deliver. Autonomous teams work differently. You still start with that vision, you still start with the company goals. It's still important to set that benchmark of what you want to hit. But then you shut the hell up and you let each team go and figure out what they can do to contribute to that goal, how they can help achieve that goal. And then as they start coming back and reporting back to you, remember the quarter of the year hasn't even started yet, you can see, oops, we have a gap. Before the planning window's even started. You know where there's a gap. You can see maybe Team B needs some help to get more stuff done or have a higher goal. Maybe you need to spin off a new business or a new team or a new area to focus on to actually be able to achieve that goal. But not only is each team responsible for its own destiny, you at the company level get much better visibility of what you're actually likely to achieve in that planning window. And it comes from how you measure success. So obviously we talk a lot about focusing on outcomes. You've probably, hopefully all heard this quote that people don't want a quarter-inch drill, they want a quarter-inch hole. I would argue you have to ask even more questions and dig even deeper into the motivations of the customer. Why do they want the hole in the first place? Are they trying to hang up a picture? Are they trying to put up a plasma TV on the wall? Or are they trying to get music from the living room into the bedroom and they need to feed a wire through a hole? As Albert Einstein said, because you should always quote Albert Einstein, if you had 1 hour to save the planet, you'd spend 59 minutes defining the problem, because then solving it would be easy. And it's my friend Ken Norton at Google Ventures, who built half the most successful products at Google, said, once you understand the problem at a deep level, articulating success is really easy because you know what it's like when the problem is solved. So it's a slightly simplistic example, but that customer who needs a hole in the wall, if you know that what they're actually trying to achieve is to get music from the living room to the bedroom, you know you've solved the problem when you hear music in the bedroom. It's a simple example, but it's a very profoundly different way to look at success and to look at what we want to try and achieve. And of course, I have to make this point because we see too many arguments about quantitative versus qualitative. You need both to understand whether you're achieving that outcome. Because the data will only ever tell you what happened, and the qualitative information will tell you why it happened. So we picked our team, we've figured out what skills to have, we've set them up for success. Finally, we need to pick the right process, where we all tend to get stuck. One of my favorite quotes is by Peter Drucker, who said that there is nothing quite so useless as delivering with great efficiency that which should not be done at all. And I think we as an industry have kind of been emphasizing delivery too much. We've been too focused on the wrong side of the scale. So there are all these great methodologies that are all about delivery, from Prince 2 to Agile and Scrum today. And what we kind of forget is that they almost all come from the Toyota production system. They're fantastic if you know exactly what you want to build, and you want to build it as cheaply, efficiently, and error-free as possible. What we forget in that is that the people who design the engines or design the cars that go onto the production lines, they don't work like that because they can't work like that. They don't know what they're going to solve. They don't know what the problem is. They have to use a different tool set. And UX people, you've been telling us this for a long time. I hope we're finally starting to listen. There are tons, there's more than I can fit on one slide, methodologies, tool sets, processes, frameworks that you can use to do this discovery side, to really understand what the customer needs before you figure out how to build it. And of course, as we all know, there's no actual line between these two. It's a constant process of iteration and improvement. It's a constant process of discovery, defining the problem, designing the solution, delivering it, experimenting, measuring outcomes, and starting all over again. You guys know this. Because at the end of the day, the discovery side makes sure that you're building the right thing, and the delivery side's making sure that you're building it right. So when you're looking at any methodology, when you're talking to any agile coach or anyone else like that, beware the dogma. Because even the Agile Manifesto itself, which I'm a huge fan of, tells us that we value responding to change over following a plan. And what is following Lean, Agile, Scrum, Kanban, or anything to the letter but following a plan? You have to figure out what your teams need, how your teams want to work, and what cadence they need to work at, and pick their best bits of everything to make sure that they can be as effective as they want to be. So just to wrap up, a few final thoughts. One final quote. John Maida said that don't forget that people make the stuff, but relationships make the bigger stuff. So if you get the people and the relation part right, everything else will follow. So start by assembling your team and making sure that they're diverse, cross-functional, and co-located. Set them up for success by thinking about psychological safety, autonomy, and purpose. Pick the right process, making sure that you're balancing discovery and delivery. Or to translate this whole talk into one slide, hire smart people, get out of the way, and focus on outcomes. Because product management's not about product. Product management's about people. Thank you very much.